So, Khushi, thank you so much for being the first person on this podcast, through which I hope to help a lot of aspiring athletes and in any way possible. So, I'm trying to get a lot of professionals in their field on this podcast. And what's better than a sports psychologist first, especially in India, with all the stigma around it.
Right.
So, thank you so much for being here. And for those of you that don't know, Khushi graduated from Loughborough University a year ago with a
Right.
degree in sports psychology. And for the past year, you've already worked at two very big organizations in India with multiple sports.
Right.
So thank you so much for being here and taking the time.
Thank you so much, and I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so let's dive into it. First thing I would like to ask you, which I've been interested about, and we've spoken about this before, is how the transition from athlete to sports psychologist was for you, because you played competitive sports, basketball, for most of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, the transition was quite smooth actually. I'm quite surprised now that I think of it. It was pretty smooth. I've been an athlete for 13 years, or I was an athlete for
Yeah.
13 years. And as an athlete, I focused a lot on the physical, technical, and the tactical aspect of the game, which I think a lot of the athletes do now,
Yeah.
which is not wrong, obviously. But there's this memory which is like etched in my mind, and I think it will be in my mind forever.
Yeah.
And I think that's what marked the beginning of my, you can say, the passion for sports psychology.
And mental aspect of it.
Yes, that's where I started to learn more about it, or wanted to know more about it. And I think I was 13 years old, and
That's
yeah.
right. Damn.
Yeah. So when I was 13, we had a semi-finals for one of these tournaments, which was an important one, and because it was a selection tournament, and I was in such a situation where it was a lot of pressure for a 13-year-old. I did not
Right.
understand that as a 13-year-old, and to correctly quote, I was told that the school's reputation depends on you.
Oof.
I mean,
For a 13-year-old, that's a
yes,
lot of
for
pressure.
a 13-year-old,
Yeah.
13-year-old, that's a lot of pressure. Well, fortunately, I did not think a lot about it, and I think I managed that situation quite well. But obviously, after the game, that's when I started thinking a lot about, the mental aspect of it.
At 13.
At 13,
Oof.
yes, at 13, that's when I decided that, okay, I'm still not an elite athlete. I'm still just playing. I can't even say professionally,
Yeah,
but
hobby.
yeah. And then I just started thinking about how these elite athletes who come across, they're expected to perform well all the time, and I
Every
just
day.
started to get into it. I read more about it. That's how I got into psychology, and then I decided to do my specialization in
Yeah.
sports psychology from Loughborough. And I think, the goal was just to help athletes, unleash their potential.
I mean, I guess that's why we also get along and have been friends for this long. 'Cause that's also my goal. But okay, so yeah.
Yeah, but just to add to that, I mean, surely it is sometimes challenging, because sometimes when I watch athletes play and I watch the crazy things that they do, I do think about what would have happened if I would have continued to play, how things would have panned out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the
Okay.
shift was quite smooth, but yeah.
So my next question, just a very general one. Do you think someone can be an athlete and a sports psychologist at the same time? It's
Yes.
gonna be hard, no?
It will be.
It's gonna be a mental battle all the time, I would feel.
Yes, but I think, I think that's very subjective. It depends on how. For me, it was not that difficult, because I was also, although I was an athlete, but I equally focused a lot on my education side, and I was always very serious about that
Yeah,
aspect.
I know.
So I think that is also one of the reasons why the transition was not very difficult.
Yeah.
Because I could just move from this to that, and I think I never really told myself that, okay, I'm never going to play professionally ever
Yeah,
again.
I mean, you were playing in Loughborough, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did play, but
Yeah.
yes, somewhere I just knew that, okay, maybe I just want to help athletes now.
Yeah.
But I never really told myself that, okay, this is how it is going to be, and you're never going to play professionally again. Because then I think then the transition would have been a little difficult, but I think otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, right now, if I were to become a sports psychologist when I've set my mind to being a professional athlete, my mind would go crazy.
Yes, I think your priorities will somewhat change.
I'm really interested in it, but I would never be a sports psychologist. Like, I love the mental aspect of it, but no.
Yes.
It would kill me.
Yeah, but I think I like the idea of you thinking about how an athlete should also focus on the education aspect of it. I think is quite important.
Yeah.
You know, for sometimes athlete may not make it to the top. Not all will. That's the hard truth.
Definitely.
And there's always a plan B. That's one reason. And I think the most important one is that education will, more than education, it will help your it will help you to be more active, which will also help your game, and which will also help you on the court or the mat or whatever
mental
it is.
aspect of it.
Yes, you will try to be more self-aware, you will try to be more reflective, you will think more better decisions. I personally think that it would play an important role in your sporting career.
Okay, now going into the stigma. So you've been working in India with professionals or elite athletes, the best of the best in India for the past year. And I mean, there's people who come to you from metropolitan cities and rural areas. And how does the mentality pan out around sports psychology? And what do you think, what direction is India going in? Do you think it's the right direction?
To be honest, when you talk about the rural and the urban areas, I think in India it's quite similar. Surely people coming from the rural areas or the athletes coming from the rural areas may have a little more stigma towards the discipline, but I think the urban or the people coming from cities also do. And what I've noticed surprisingly is that every time, or say the first session I take with these athletes, post that, most of them revert to you asking for another session.
You're just good.
No. Maybe I think it's just that people have started realizing how important the mental aspect of the game is as well. Because I'm sure you've come across, I mean, I shared that reel with you the other day, or I posted it on my story, where there's a study which talks about how the top 5% of the tennis athletes and the top 25% of the tennis athletes, like what is the difference between these top 5 and these top 25. So their technical, tactical and their physical aspects are, I won't say more or less similar, because even at an elite level they are expected to work on their technical
the skill set.
Skills. But I think what differentiates them is the mental
aspect.
bit of it. After every point or after every, I don't know, tackle, how are you getting back in the game? I mean, Roger Federer talks about a 15-second rule, where he mentions how after the point you spend the first 5 seconds just accepting it or acknowledging the point, whether it was a loss or a win, or a good or a bad point according to the athlete. Then you focus on the next 5 seconds, you focus on the relaxation bit of it, and the last 5 you focus on the preparation bit of it. So where am I going to serve next? So
it's easy to say, but to do that in 5 seconds in that moment, so much practice, no?
Yes,
that's why you need to start.
I mean, all these elites talk about how much stress they feel or how nervous they feel. I mean, for them it's even more difficult. Okay, they've reached that point, but to maintain that level for a long time, to meet with those expectations, it's
day in, day out.
Yes, it's a little difficult. So yes, athletes feel that, okay, going to a sports psychologist, it will help me to be confident 100% of the times, or I will never be afraid, or I will never be nervous. But I think it's very important to understand that nervousness and confidence and these things. So you tell me, you're an athlete. Have you ever been confident 100% of the time?
No.
No, and I think that's very normal. That's very normal.
I think you're lying to yourself if you say you're confident all the time. Like, I think one of my favorite athletes is Kobe Bryant, and he always says it, like, he felt those things and he only got through them because he accepted them. And he said, okay, I have them, but they're not going to kill me.
Right. So a champion is someone, as again quoting Roger Federer, a champion is someone who is able to master these, setbacks, where he's able to come back from these setbacks. So because your energy will go where your thought goes.
Yeah.
And like he said, negative energy is wasted energy. So.
True.
Yeah.
But coming back to the stigma point, I mean, I have been living in a metropolitan city, Pune, and I have been going to a sports psychologist since I was 15, 16, I think.
Yeah.
One of the very few, I would say, because my parents are very supportive. But I must say, like, it's not just India. Even when I've been playing overseas for the past 3 years in Spain, and even when I tell most people there, when I tell them they're a bit set back, I mean, they won't say anything to your face, but you can tell they're a bit set back, like, oh, really?
Right.
Like, yeah, so it's
Yes.
not just India.
Yeah, no, surely, you're right, you're quite right. I mean, my professors and supervisors from the UK say the same thing. They say that it's not just in India, it happens in the UK as well.
Yeah.
I think the kind of understanding that people have about the subject is that you go to a sports psychologist or you go to a psychologist only when something is wrong, or only when
Yeah, exactly.
people think you're crazy or something.
Basically.
Yes, but it's not that. I mean, surely we provide support to an athlete, mental health, the
Wise.
mental health bit of it, but that's only 50% of the work that we do. The rest of the 50% is more about it. It resembles to what a coach does, in the sense that we're quite active and we focus on the strengthening bit of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's very important to understand. We work on the performance aspect as well.
Yeah.
So obviously, to support the mental health, I think that's non-negotiable. That just has to happen.
It's like not doing strength and conditioning when you're trying to play professionally.
Exactly. Yes.
We spoke about it day before yesterday when you explained how you don't just sit in a clinic and talk to athletes.
Yes.
You watch them, you help them with their warm-ups so they feel better.
Right.
But all on the bit of mental side, but it's, I think, a mix of everything.
Yes,
right?
it is. I mean, whatever we're training on, we take it to the pitch as well to see how they're able to transfer it, and to help them recognize what will help them better. So those sort of things, and it's not necessarily, like I said, just mental health support where we can just sit with them and empathize with them. That, like I said,
Can
it
be a
has
part
to
of
happen.
it.
Yeah. But that's only a part of what we do as sports psychologists.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people know that. I think it's
Yes.
just going to a clinic and sitting down and talking about
Yes.
emotions, which is a part of it,
Yeah, surely.
but not all of it.
Right. So it's important to let go of that mentality of what we do as psychologists.
I do believe it's happening slowly.
Yes, surely. Yes, slowly but
No,
surely.
do you think so?
I think so. Yes, it will take some time.
Not fast
but
enough.
yeah. But like I said, I've taken sessions with athletes, and they definitely get back to you saying, "Ma'am, when can I see you next?" So it's good progress.
It's a start.
Yes.
I guess they just need that first session.
Yes.
Which is easier in organizations when you're, let's say, at an organization playing already.
Right.
So they send you to a sports psychologist.
Right.
But in norm, a day-to-day basis, if you're living at home, makes it harder.
Yes.
I believe.
I mean, it's not always that they send the athlete to the sports psychologist. The athlete always has the choice to come visit us whenever.
Yeah.
We work with the other sports science teams as well, like the coach, the S&Cs, and we talk to all of them. If the coach thinks there's, if we want to, if we should speak with the athlete, so that the coach can focus more on the technical aspect of it, and we're there to support the athlete from the other end. So yes, that happens. And again, at an organization, it's quite easy because they have
the option.
They have the resources.
Yeah.
And I think it's just easier.
I think it's commendable that organizations in India today have the resources and the capability to provide sports psychologists.
Yes.
Think about it, 10 years ago.
No.
Exactly.
I mean, wait for another 10 years, I think things are getting...
I cannot wait for it. Okay. Now, one of the biggest things I as an athlete have struggled with is I always told myself when I was younger or coming up that no matter what happens in my life, external of the sport, no matter how hard life is getting, I can always perform. But recently I've realized that's not the case because I'm living alone in Spain, and it's not always easy, you know. Things outside of your sport that happen in your life do affect you. So yeah, just basically what you have to say about that, and maybe I'm sure a lot of athletes struggle with that. So how you can better that? Like for me, what made it better was just accepting that okay, things that happen in life do affect how I play,
Right.
and so it's very important for me to keep a good balance in life, be, let's say, happy, healthy, I would say,
Right.
in life,
Yes.
and that helps me play better. Which I think after denying it for 5 years, I finally accepted like a few months ago. So
Right.
when I got to a point where life was not very good and I was playing like shit, pardon my French, and at that point I had to be like, okay, like there has to be a correlation.
Right.
So,
I mean, surely, you mentioned balance. I think that's quite important. I had a couple friends who were athletes or who are athletes, and they talk about how it can get a little fatiguing, where
Yeah.
you're constantly thinking about just your game,
yeah.
how you're going to perform. And in a country like India, where, again, in a sport like cricket, where there's so many opportunities, and you're always in that mindset that, okay, how am I going to be better than everyone else?
Yeah.
So as an athlete, you would end up putting in so much effort. So putting in effort is a good thing, but that balance is important, where you focus on the self-care,
Yeah.
your self-care. Sometimes taking a break is fine.
It's the hardest thing for me.
I know, but like again, taking a break would not necessarily mean going on a vacation. Not necessarily. To do anything which reminds you why you started playing the sport.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy about it? Why have you done that? Like, for example, for me to find a balance between my work life and my personal life, it does get a little stressful as a psychologist.
Of course.
But again, for me, a non-negotiable is going to the gym or training or playing basketball at times.
Yeah.
So that's how I find my peace, or it's just, I think, if that's what you're talking about, that's the balance in life.
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is-
but also I feel like that's also something I've struggled with, and I guess a lot of athletes, because my escape, my passion is basketball,
Right,
and then when you try to make it your profession, can't really be that anymore.
right.
Like then every time you get on court, at least for me, I'm thinking about how I can get better, how I can be where I want to be. And then for the past, I've had sessions with my sports psychologist where she's told me I need to find something else that I enjoy
Right.
that is not physical.
Right.
Because if you burn out physically and mentally, you need something that's relaxing, and I've still not found it. So
I mean, yes, I think she's right. As athletes, professional athletes, we tend to forget that we started the sport because we enjoyed it. So it's important to find your why, right? Why did I start it? And to find that fun aspect in that sport again. And I think I like the philosophy of Stoicism. So Stoics say that in a situation there are two things. One is something which you can control, and the other is something you cannot control. So control the controllables and just accept it. Like you said, obviously it's a slow process.
you're just attacking me right now. But okay. No, I feel it, but yeah.
No, surely
Yeah.
it takes a lot of time. Like you said, it's easier to say
Yeah.
things, But again, as an athlete or ex-athlete, retired athlete, I don't want to say the word retired, but I get what you're saying and I get where you're coming from. I think, I think I'm not attacking you, but all I want to say is that you will get there.
Yeah,
with,
need.
with time you will,
Yeah.
surely. And I think the social support aspect is also very important.
Very important for me. Yeah.
It's very important. Always to have that close circle of yours, those 5 or 10 people of yours.
Yeah.
Right.
It's amazing. My escape is that, like when I go out with, let's say, friends or sometimes family, my cousins, that is my escape,
Right.
Now when I've made basketball my profession or trying to make it my profession,
Right.
my escape is just going out with my friends a bit, because when I'm around these people, I don't think about
Right.
other things in life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they just make you feel better.
Yeah.
Like they will never make you want to doubt yourself, or if it's not doubt, it's just I don't know. I think it just helps a lot.
They don't think of you as, let's say, for me, oh, just the athlete. They just
Yeah.
know, oh, just the friend.
Exactly.
And that's
Yes.
nice.
Yes, and they see how hard you're working, you
Yeah.
know, and they'll just always be there.
Yeah.
So,
But coming back to the point where I said things that are happening in life, do you think they affect your performance?
surely.
Surely, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
surely. They surely do.
I mean, I needed to hear that. But I mean, I knew it, but I need to hear it. And I think
No,
a lot of
they-
people do.
Yes, they surely
Yeah.
do. That's
Yeah.
what. Of course, it affects your performance. How much things, a certain thing matters to you. It, that's how it will affect your performance.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, again, just coming back to the control the controllables. Always in every situation, just try to see what is it that I can control or what is it that I can't control. If there's something, again, easy to say,
Yeah.
but I
No,
think
no,
that's the kind of
definitely.
mindset you
You-
will develop with time when you consciously do it.
Do it.
And then when you just internalize it, that's how you will be thinking. Yeah.
And then you keep telling yourself that. Because I think also control, this thing you said about control, also in a team sport, like I play a team sport and it's so many things you cannot control. Like I
Right.
think in an individual sport, there's a bit more you can control. But in a team sport, you're not playing for yourself. Like you're playing to win as a unit. So
Right.
the coach, the other players, you cannot control these things. So
Right.
I think it's a very important thing for team sports where
Surely.
you just try to control what you can and perform when you get the
Right.
opportunity to
Yeah. And you apply the same principle outside of sport.
outside of sport.
You know,
Yeah.
so like you said, the things which are affecting your performance, if you apply to this principle to the outside of your sporting life, basically.
Makes
It will,
sense.
yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, and one of the last things would be, what is one thing, if there's any, that you've seen athletes struggle with the most that you've worked with, and yeah, and how maybe you can help, you have or can help them.
I think what athletes mainly struggle with is being resilient or being basically just bouncing back.
Really.
I mean, in an athlete's life, say injury is something which is quite common. What is an athlete expected to do, or what does an athlete expect from himself is to bounce back from that. Again, it's easy to mention these things or talk about it, but it's
Yeah.
very difficult to do that. And I think even before we get there, what is important is for an athlete to be self-aware. I think that's where it all begins. When an athlete is self-aware, when you recognize where the concern is, or what is that thing that is troubling you, or when you just recognize these things. So the first step is to recognize it,
Yeah.
and that is what will lead to change eventually.
Yeah.
So the first step to change is recognition, or so recognizing it first, and then obviously gradually self-awareness. So being self-aware and then reflecting on things, analyzing things, it will give you better clarity as to how to work around things.
Yeah.
So it'll help you set better goals, and like I mentioned, the Roger Federer thing, the 15-second rule,
Yeah.
that is him being self-aware. So he's accepted what has happened, then he's decided to prepare for the next shot,
Yeah. I mean,
So
okay. Yeah, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but let's say not this season, but the last season, I was living in my head because I was being so self-aware about everything.
Right.
And this season I said, okay, that's it, like, oh, just please stop. Like, you're thinking about it too much, just go out there, play, and then have fun. Try to have fun.
Yes.
And it kind of works, so...
Yes, again, it's about balance also. When I say being self-aware, so for example, when you're playing the sport, you're in a flow state. There's a
Yeah.
possibility you're in a flow state, and maybe that's not when you're really thinking about, okay, what have I done, what have I not done. So no, that's not how it is. And again, every athlete is different.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so the individualistic difference. So like something might work for you, the other thing might not work for you.
Yeah.
So again, like I said, there has to be a balance. You cannot be on
Definitely.
the extreme ends of the spectrum, right? So when you obviously, like Virat Kohli talks about it, that you have to be in the zone, So if someone like Federer is talking about a 15-second rule, Virat Kohli is talking about just being in the zone,
yeah.
right? You know, being present. Does not mean Federer is not present. It's just different way of approaching things.
Yeah.
And they all, elites in fact talk about a lot of the mental skills like visualization. I mean, Michael Phelps did, Virat Kohli did, everyone does it.
Yeah.
And yes, again, just linking it to the stigma bit that it's important, but okay, I think I've just
debated. It's okay. Like that's what happens when we have conversations about these things.
Yes.
But okay, the one thing.
Right. So I think yes, being self-aware, but like you also said, enjoying the sport. I think that's so important. Finding a balance, and being self-aware will make you understand, or you will rather realize what works for you and what doesn't work for you, where you will keep exploring more things. And like I said, helps with the kind of goals you set for yourself, how you want to take a break, or how you want to just spend time outside of sport.
Finding what works for you, basically.
Yeah,
it's going to be different for everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think the major issue or the major concern is athletes being able to, I mean, there are so many cases of competitive anxiety that athletes talk about, fear of failing, and there are different ways of approaching these things. So I think that's one thing which I would want to focus more on. But as psychologists, we sometimes, when athletes talk to us about these things, we tend to think about how, okay, this, because he's talking to me about it, I think it might be a psychological issue. If he goes to a nutritionist, she might look at it in a different way. Yeah. So I think that collaboration is also
between
important.
all aspects.
Yeah, but also for me as a sports psychologist to look at things in a different way. So if I think, okay, it might not necessarily be psychological, so I would want to understand how his hydration is, or how his warm-up is, and
from the incident you told me that
the different things, right? And I think that's
okay, makes sense. Now to end, so I have a concept for the podcast where you leave a question for the next person who will be on the podcast. Okay. One for the next person who will be on the podcast, and one for me, which the questions I will not read before the podcast. So when I'm in a session with...
I'm not sure if that's true.
I promise I won't read it. So when it'll be in this book, locked. So when we have the session, at the end of the session, because you're the first one, I don't have questions for you from anyone before.
Thank God.
But so when we do the podcast with the next person, I'm just going to open it in front of them. It'll be at the end of the book. I'm going to give you the page now, and that's the concept I have, which I think is a bit interesting, a bit of fun. So you can write, you can just carry it and write it, so I don't look at it, and then turn the page. You can think about it and write whatever you want. I mean, it's just something to have fun with the podcast. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, surely it's a good
idea.
But
I'll give you this much. The next person coming on is a basketball player who's played for India, and an athlete who's been playing the sport for, I think, more than 25, 30 years. So if that helps you frame a question.
Okay.
Okay, you can just change the page. Yeah, I'm not going to look at it. Okay. Once again, thank you so much, and I hope this gets out to as many people as possible, just so we can help them, and hopefully more people are inclined to go to a sports psychologist after this, especially if they really want to be great, because I think it's 50% or more. For me, it's more than 50% of the game, because after one point, when you reach a level, the skill sets are more or less the same. Like the things that differentiates you is your mental aspect and how you can get through things. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And hopefully I get more business after this.
Yeah, you're just starting off, so let's see. I hope so too.
Yeah, jokes apart, I think this is a good way to just like reach people and just talk a little more about sports psychology a little more openly without any stigma.
Stigma around it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Perfect.
thank you so much. I love being here.
Thank